In some previous lessons, you've been brainstorming ideas about your oral presentation, and you've also been learning some techniques to be more persuasive and how to present in an engaging way. We need to put all of that together now and start to firm up your ideas and basically get to the point where you're drafting your actual presentation and thinking through each element of it. So in order to do that, I'm going to get you to submit a plan that includes all of these elements. So it needs to include, let me zoom in a little here. It needs to include your topic. Obviously, I need to know what your topic is. You've already done that in a previous lesson. I need to know your contention. You might want to refine what you've written previously. Each of your main arguments, if you're thinking like an essay, your main points, your point paragraphs, your body paragraphs, I guess I should say. What specific evidence or examples are you going to use to support your argument? And make sure you do include some things from the novel. You've got to be linking it to Kill a Mockingbird, though I encourage you to go a lot beyond that as well. You need to be thinking about what persuasive techniques will you use? How will you be actually convincing? Again, you can get some ideas from the previous lessons. And finally, how will you make it engaging and interesting for your audience to watch and listen to? So what presentation techniques, like oral presentation techniques, and other creative techniques will you use? Because remember, it is multimedia, so you can be as creative as you want. So in order to include all of those things, I've created a template for you. So to complete this lesson, you need to click on this link, and it will open a new Google Doc. And it will say, do you want to make a copy? Yes, I want to make a copy. Now, the first thing you need to do after you make your copy is rename it. So see, it's copy of Persuasive Presentation Plan. Let's rename it to your surname. That makes it easy for me to find. And also click on this Move button and put it into your English 10 folder. That's really important that you put it into that English 10 folder so that I can then access it. Okay, and so then we can move down to the actual template here. So you can see there's some bits that are already filled in, and then there's some blank areas for you to fill in. So the first thing is, what's your topic and what's your contention? So I'm just going to make up a topic, not one related to what you're doing, because I don't want you to steal my ideas. So I'm going to say my topic is, should schools move to a system of remote learning, like online learning. So my contention is that schools should move to a system of remote learning. Okay, so notice that my first thing is I'm really just stating the topic again. I could say should or should not. I'm answering that question. I'm responding directly to it. And I need to give my ultimate reason, the one reason that brings it all together. So one tip is you might want to use the word because. It doesn't always work, but that can be a good tip. So I've answered the question, schools should move to a system of remote learning, and I'm giving my number one, not just my number one, but the reason that brings all my other reasons together. So my reason is because, for the sake of argument, I'm going to say it leads to better educational outcomes for students. Okay, so I've got my topic, I've got my contention. Hopefully you're more or less just pasting them in from a previous lesson, but as always, you might want to, this is a chance to refine your contention, to rethink, is that really the topic you want to address? Okay, now you can see here we've got 5 different columns, and you can fill down as many as you need, and you can right click and insert rows below if you need more. The first thing is the section or point. So for example, you'll want some kind of introduction, so that's a section, and then you might want to say a point. So what's the idea that you want to get down? So some of my ideas might have to do with data shows that the data can be my evidence. Students score better on standardized tests. Okay, so I might have found some evidence that students who learn remotely actually score better on standardized tests. So that could be one of my arguments. It could be, I might have a point that's about social emotional needs, and maybe I've got some arguments around that, about that it's better emotionally for students, which leads to better educational outcomes. It means they don't have to put up with awful teachers, like certain English teachers, you don't have to see them. That leads to better educational outcomes. And obviously I want some kind of conclusion at the end as well. So I guess section or point, I wasn't really happy with that as a heading, but the idea is some things are sections like introductions, conclusions. You might want to have a section that's just about rebuttal or something like that. And then your points are the actual arguments. You can elaborate on those, so you can put in additional ideas that you want to say here, and you can have evidence to back it up as well. So for this one I might say I want to refer to the data from Melbourne University, whatever piece of evidence I've got, 96% of students, blah, 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 and I can fill that in with the evidence that I want to include to back up my argument. Now I want to think about what persuasive techniques am I going to use here as well. So I might want to say, okay, for this particular point, I've misspelled university. Thank you, Google. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm definitely going to use statistics, right? That's already inherent in it. I might also use something like a rhetorical question, because I think asking a rhetorical question that I can answer with hard data, that could be effective. I might also use like an appeal to national pride or something like that. Like, don't we want a strong economy and a strong nation where students are achieving their best, something like that. So an appeal to national pride. We want Australia to be in the cutting edge, and this data proves that this is how we get there, and we need to do whatever it takes. And then the last thing here is presentation and creative elements. So I need to think about what's going to make me present really well in terms of speaking and body language. So I'm thinking I might use a bit of repetition and slow my voice down when I'm stating the statistics. So I'm going to think that through. 96%. I'll say it once and then I'll pause. 96%. So I'm going to use pace and repetition for emphasis. I'm also thinking stats can be a bit dry, but what if I included a visual to back it up? What if I had some kind of data, like a graph to show, okay, this is how the percentage of students who achieve well, I don't even know what the stats are, but this is that percentage, this is that percentage, and I can compare it and I can talk over it. So I'm going to use visual graphs to illustrate visual graphs. Is there any other kind? But the point is I'm using visual elements. I'm going to have graphs to illustrate the stats. And if I got really creative, I could animate them or something. But again, that depends on your skill level and the time you've got to be able to do that sort of thing. I've just realized that I've left this one blank, so I should go back. So it's all well and good that I've got my point here, but what am I actually going to say about it? What arguments am I actually making here? Well, once again, I'm thinking about, so it's specifically about educational outcomes, whereas some others might be about, this one might be about sympathy, and so over here my persuasive technique would be like an appeal to sympathy. I might, as evidence, I might use a specific story, like a human story, an anecdote about one student and their experience. And my arguments there would be centering around care for people and things like that. And the emotional needs of people are better met in the home and something like that. So for this one though, I'm struggling a little bit to unpack it on the fly. I wish I'd planned a bit better. That's why I'm getting you to do a plan for yours, so you don't end up like me on camera rambling. So students score better on standardized tests. My arguments are going to center around educational outcomes, about building a strong economy through strong education. I've just sort of made that up then, but that's going to be the point I'm trying to make. So the big point is that it leads to better results on standardized tests. My arguments are going to be that this is what we need to build a stronger nation with better educated citizens. I'm going to back it up with data from Melbourne University. I'm going to use statistics. I'm going to use a rhetorical question, and I'm going to appeal to national pride in order to do that. So it ties in here about the economy and the strong education. And I've already started to think about how I'll say that and what might be in my video on my screen or on my slides or that sort of thing while I'm talking about it. I'm also thinking if I'm comparing data, 96% compared with only this, I might want to use certain hand gestures as well. So I'm going to put that in as well. So because I need to think about body language, comparative hand gestures. I know what that means. It sort of makes sense, right? Comparison with my hands. And that's the idea. So you need to go right through all of these different sections, work out what are the big points you're going to make, what different arguments are you going to use to support each one, what evidence are you going to draw on to support your arguments, and then specifically how you're going to persuade and engage your audience. When that's all filled in, it's already been moved into your English 10 folder, you've renamed it, then you're ready to submit back on Schoology and submit the URL here. And then you're only sort of one step away from being ready to start making your presentation. So I can't wait to hear what you guys come up with, and I hope this template and writing this plan will help you to have a really well-structured, well thought through, persuasive, engaging video presentation.